Okay, so hello and welcome everyone to another installment of Thrive with Artwork Archive. We always like to start these off with welcome any of those of you that are new to Artwork Archive, as well as thanking our existing users for helping us continue to improve the platform. For those that are new and unfamiliar with Artwork Archive is a platform that provides artists the tools they need to get organized, manage and grow their businesses, and showcase their work. And the theme for today's Thrive is the year of the profitable artist, and really how to get started off on the right financial foot. So, you hear us talk about this a lot. As an artist, you're also an entrepreneur and a small business owner. And in this new year, embracing both your creativity and your business savvy within your art career is something we feel is really important. So if you prepare yourself now with some structures that work for you, we believe you'll find, and create financial success throughout the year. So quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to kick things off with how to get in the right financial mindset. And Katie, my colleague who lives and breathes this stuff, is also a working artist herself, is going to kick off that. And then we're going to jump into some financial success tactics and how to use Artwork Archive to track and reach your financial goals. And we'll follow up with some Q&A. And Alyssa, you can cover a quick talking point on the Q&A front.
Just gonna unmute myself. Yes, so we're really eager to hear your questions throughout all these Thrive webinars. We've gotten a lot, so we'll just preface the fact that we may not be able to get to everyone. But first and foremost, how do you post a question? You can post a question within your Zoom interface. If you hit the Q&A icon at the bottom, please feel free to enter your question. And everyone else, you can upvote. So you can say, yes, that is a question that I am curious about as well. And you can upvote that question. And so we will see what the most popular questions are. That Q&A, like Justin said, will be at the end. We will try to get to as many as we can. Another thing to note, you all are entering, who you are and where you're from within the chat. That's another great place if you have any technical issues. If something is not coming through clearly, please feel free to enter that in the chat. But the chat is just for, tech. The Q&A is where you post your questions, and that is where we will answer the questions. And we will be answering questions just focused on financials. So we tend to get a lot of great questions about Artwork Archive in general, about the platform. But for today's purposes, since we have limited time, we will only be focusing on financial questions. Another thing.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Another thing to note is we are recording this session. So you will be receiving this recording along with the slides and other assets tomorrow after the presentation. So if you have to jump off early, or if you didn't quite catch something, no worries, we'll be sending you a recording as well.
So Alyssa mentioned limited time. We're going to try to get through this as quick as possible. I think Katie and I were having a borderline existential crisis here, because when we started to get into this, and when we started to look at a lot of the questions that are most commonly asked, keys to financial success and strategies and such, it is such a wide topic. There's just so much to cover. So you're going to notice in the certain parts that we'll either consolidate certain things and then provide resources, as Alyssa mentioned, that will be sent out, like worksheets and things like that you can look at in your own time. And then when we were initially going to have a lot of elements about taxes in here, but we have artists from over 130 different countries, and there's a lot of different tax laws and regulations, and we didn't feel equipped to fully speak to that the way we wanted. We will be doing a general tax session with a tax professional that's going to go over some best practices. And this is going to come within the next month or so to give you some advance notice before, at least the US filing date. And I think that's going to be a really excellent session. But without further ado, let's jump into it. I am going to turn off my camera because it looks like I'm in my industrial studio, and I don't think anybody needs to see that today. And I am going to be driving this presentation. So Katie, please kick us off.
All right, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us. Thank you, Justin and Alyssa. I wanted to get started. Introducing myself, I am also an artist. I've been with Artwork Archive for about 6 years now and run our content team. I'm also a ceramic artist. So while I'm not a financial advisor, I've gone through a lot of these things, both myself, with my community, and talked to thousands of artists over the years through Artwork Archive about these topics. So I always like to start this by getting into the right financial mindset. I think these things have been very helpful for me. So we'll just kick it off. When you're starting the year, I like to kind of have a way check in with yourself. I talked to Jody King, who's an art and creative coach recently, and she said something that really resonated. She noticed a lot with her clients that people were giving discounts just even to their family before people were asking. So how do you get into a place where you understand your value, you understand what they're bringing? If they didn't want to buy it, they wouldn't buy it. So don't undersell yourself before it's on the table. Another thing that I've found really helpful for myself that an early mentor told me was to price myself out of my work. And that might sound weird or difficult. And what that means is that I was pricing my work so that I could afford it. And I also was not making a lot of money at the time. So I was pricing it too low. You're never going to get out of that frame unless you're pricing yourself out at the start. So you make it a little bit uncomfortable for yourself and you price it higher. If things are selling too fast, it's not always a good thing. That means you're just going to burn out and you're never going to reach kind of like a more comfortable place. And also another thing to keep in mind is that money can be relative. So what $20 to me is, it might be $200 to another person. So people are very different with their money and you don't have to hold on to that mind frame for yourself. So these are just things that you can kind of feel out and see how that works for you. So that's kind of more of a nebulous thinking about money. And then we are going to go into some more practical ways to deal with your money and set yourself up for financial freedom. And how that starts is kind of boring, is just figuring out what your personal financial needs are and what your business financial needs are. So in January every year, I sit down and I write down my expected, recurring, and expected expenses for the year. So list out everything from rent, groceries, your phone bill, everything that you know that you're going to have to spend. And then we will have some worksheets on this later. So then that'll help you create a base for establishing a budget. And a lot of financial planners, they do recommend doing a 50-30-20 split for your needs, wants, and savings. So that means 50 goes into everything that you actually have to do, your housing, food, electricity, 30 for those wants, and 20 savings and debt. This will also help you further determine your profitability and total revenue, which we will go over in the product, and help you show what you're actually making, and then minus all your expenses. All right, so we can kind of zip through these. It's just ways to figure out at the start of the year how to go through the next 12 months and always check back in. Are there different ways that you can earn money from your art business? And there's a lot of different ways, and not everything is for everyone, but it would be great. And this is again in the worksheets, but how can you expand and diversify what you're already offering? And that might be online classes or downloadables or licensing, grants, printing, podcasting, or commercial clients like hospitals or hotels. So figuring out different ways. Artists are unique in that their money just doesn't come from one job. It's not a salary. You're figuring out different ways, and there's a whole pie chart of where your income is coming from. So experimenting with those while also looking back on your last year and seeing what you need to keep steady. Bartering and trading is also great for other services, and it's a great way within the artist community to work with others like yourself. Do you know photographers? Do you know marketers? Do you know people that you can trade services for and work something out? Crowdfunding is an option. Always make sure you have a financial system. It's great, such as Artwork Archive or QuickBooks or something to keep track of your receipts at the end of the year. You will thank yourself come April when you have something in place. And then lastly, we do, if you guys haven't seen it yet, we just did release a complete guide to artist grants and opportunities in 2022. And that's a great way to see if there are some free opportunities to apply for, so you can get some micro grants or bigger grants or financial planning. This is where we will send this slide out to you guys. So this will be some downloadable worksheets that you can personalize your financial information for and kind of put it down in writing, so you're not just thinking about it, and then revisit it quarterly and halfway through the year and then at the end of the year. It's a great way to just actually make sure you're staying on track. And I will hand it off to Justin now.
Okay, thanks for that overview. One other just quick point I wanted to make on one of the points Katie mentioned, which is talking about alternative revenue sources. We have really seen the rise with this, particularly over COVID. A lot of people's galleries or art fairs or things like that were taken away. And we've really seen a lot of artists get very innovative in finding alternative sources of income. And, you know, as Katie mentioned, the commercial clients, it's been interesting to see artists double down on what's really working for them, but also start to experiment with some of these other potential sources. We saw a lot of people taking to virtual and doing teaching and helping other artists and having that be a revenue stream, but it's been interesting to see that happen. So I am about to get into how to better track this information and document this stuff using Artwork Archive. Before I do, I want to talk about the benefits, so at least you understand why all this drudgery is worth it, because this is definitely the kind of unsexy side of the art business. So increased visibility. When you are recording your sales and expenses, you really have a clear financial picture of how your business is progressing, and you can see what's working and what's not. Informed pricing. This is really one of the toughest challenges I think we all face as artists in determining how do you price your work? What went into it? What is your time worth? What materials went in there? So when you have a clear picture of what it's actually costing you in terms of time, materials, and other expenses related to the production of your work, it does help you get a better idea of how to price it. Simplified taxes. Boy, does everyone dread, including myself, the looming tax deadline and all of the things that you have to do to prepare for that. Whether you use our system or any other kind of accounting system to capture your income related items, it just simplifies things. And having it all under one roof that you can easily report on or share with your accountant makes life a heck of a lot easier. Lastly, better analytics. I know, like, I'm a nerd, so this is probably something that's, you know, more attractive to how my mind works. But I think in general, we've seen a lot of our artists over the last decade really benefit from having a clear picture of productions versus sales. What work is selling? What outlets like galleries or coffee shops or art fairs or any of those, which are being most productive for me? What are those relationships I need to invest in more? You know, I love doing year over year comparison. You know, did I produce more or less work this year versus last work, or sell more or less? And this is information that only comes from properly documenting and recording the information about your business, and it can really be a major success driver. So let me attempt to get out of this. This is obviously the first time I've used a mouse. Okay. 1 second here. All right. I'm going to try to blow up my screen so it is more visible. Alyssian and/or Katie, can you tell me whether you can see my screen okay?
We can, yes.
I would
Wonderful.
zoom in just a little bit more.
Okay, that's going to be a pretty, how's that?
That's great. That's great.
Okay, so, you know, there's a free trial for Artwork Archive. So for any of you who are not familiar with this, you know, we've got tutorials, we've got, you know, a self-help session. This little chat guy will get you to one of the support team. So I'm going to avoid going over all the basics of Artwork Archive in general and really hone in on this income section and go over the basics of that. So this is our income tab found here on the left, and under it is revenue and expenses, sales and donations, and invoices. So let's start with revenue and expenses. So with revenue and expenses, any sale you capture within the system is automatically going to be registered under the sales and donations thing, but you may have other revenue. So if I wanted to enter another revenue source, like my teaching or something like that, I can simply click this, enter a short description, the date, the amount. I can categorize it into, let's say I was granted an award or received a grant or something like that. You can categorize it and add that revenue here. All revenue items are captured on the same screen as expenses. So this is always going to give you a general overview of revenue and expenses coming in. So another thing you can add is expenses. So I can add general expenses. So let's see if there's any good examples here. So here's membership dues, rent and lease. So you can capture not only any revenue item, not only all your sales, but also expenses. And another really important thing I want to show about expenses that I'm just going to quickly jump into is I can actually add, I mentioned before about kind of intelligence and pricing. I can actually add, let's say fabrication for XYZ. So I can enter the amount, enter the category, which would be associated with, construction costs for this piece. And I can actually assign it to a particular work of art. So let me show you what that looks like, an example of that. So Katie, I remember, never mind. So if I jump into this piece, I can see who I sold to, all those details, and everything is relational. So if I clicked on Antoinette, it's going to bring me to her contact information, and I'm going to be able to see not only everything she's bought, the entire history, her contact information, et cetera, which is all really useful. But I can also go down here and see expenses related to this particular artwork. So this is really helpful when you're looking at this and wanting to get a feel for all the things that you put into this. And I know a lot of you, particular painters, maybe you'll use the same oils for multiple works and things like that. So it's hard to get super granular, but for those projects that you're working on that have a specific concrete expense associated with that particular work itself, it's really a great way to be able to track that. So jumping back into the income tab, I want to show you the filtering here as well. I really like at the end of the year to be able to just click this, put a year in there, and then do a report that I can just hand off to my accountant or to make my own life easier if I'm doing my own taxes or financial reporting. Another thing you can do, Katie mentioned kind of quarterly reviews. You can set this to a quarter and look at just your expenses or just a specific revenue category or something specific to a particular client. And so you can really generate these helpful income reports that give you a total breakdown of everything you've done for that particular time period in a really easy to read format. You can also do that same thing. So let's say I filtered for 2021. I can also do a report that exports to an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV, and that really makes it easy to see kind of a roll up or to put that into another system if you're importing into QuickBooks or things like that. Okay, jumping to this, let me make sure I covered everything on that. Okay, jumping into the sales and donations. This is really the tab that's going to give you the overview of what you've sold, what you've donated, what you collected, were there commissions associated, all of that stuff. So you can see kind of a clear overview. Same rules apply here. I can filter by date. If I want to look and see what locations I sold the most out of, so let's say I have gallery representation with White Cube, show me everything I sold out of White Cube, or show me everything I sold out of Saatchi online or something like that. You can even break this down by client. I want to see everything that I sold to Antoinette. Okay, if I click this, it's going to break down all of the sales I've had to Antoinette. And if you really want to get more granular, you can click into that particular client, see this. And for those of you that didn't catch our last Thrive webinar about, or one of our last about CRM, I highly recommend viewing that because it really covers how in-depth we go with customer relations management. And here you can see, I can see all her purchases there as well. The other handy thing with sales and donations is I can do a sales and donation report, which looks like this. So this, I can just get an overview, see where I'm selling the most from, just a general overview, and you can set that for whatever time period you want. I really like this report too, because it will break out by location and show me what are the galleries that are best performing for me. And this could be a coffee shop, an art fair, anything, a broker you work with, or an art advisor, anything. It's just really great to see who your top buyers are, what locations are producing most. So this is, in my opinion, one of the most valuable reports. Let's see. Oh, invoices. I'm not going to cover that in great detail. The Cliff Notes version of that is you can generate invoices out of the system, traditional invoices that you can just send via email, or invoices that you can send digitally. You can accept, partial payments. It's going to let you know when that invoice has been paid. You can enter payments manually. You can see how much you have outstanding. And one of the really exciting things we're working on this year, just to kind of drop this as a hint for something that's coming in the future, is we are actually building in an offer and sales pipeline. That's going to be a really useful feature that will better enable you to get offers out to clients and see the progress and status of those offers. Lastly, insights. Once again, I did mention I'm a nerd, so I do like to see data visually. And so this is a really great way, our insights tab, of seeing, what's the value of your work in inventory. If you do have things in third parties, what's the value of the work outstanding at those locations? What are your production versus sales over time? So this is another tab that as you start using the product, this really gets a lot more useful, and a lot of people have found this very helpful in giving them valuable insights into how to move forward with their career. Katie, did I miss anything on that?
Sorry, I'm
Maybe
muting
muted.
myself. Yeah. Did you show how to get quarterly and annual reports?
I believe I did. So in all of the reports categories under the income tab, you will notice this filter, and then this date will allow you to set whatever date parameters you want. You may want to do this at the beginning of each month, or quarterly, or semi, whatever you want to do. You can control the custom date there and get those reports. Whatever you filter by is what will be generated in this report. Is there anything else you wanted me to cover on that, Katie?
No, I'm just trying to go over the questions, so seeing what people had. So keep those coming, and I can filter those to Justin as well.
Sure, and then we can jump back into the product. I've covered a lot of these things quickly. As Katie and Alyssa mentioned, we will be sending this out to everyone. It's going to have links to really specific things. So getting started with the income and expense tracking, expense category overview. When you click into some of these videos, it will take you, or help articles, it'll take you directly into exactly how to assign that expense to an individual work and how easy it is to do in the system. As I mentioned, taxes, boy, we were going to try to tackle this, and I know it's on top of everyone's mind given the time of year. We are going to do a dedicated in-depth webinar about taxes, probably within the next month and a half, and Katie will send out more details about that. And we're bringing in a bona fide tax professional that specializes in taxes for creative professionals. So Katie will have more on that in the future. Before we jump into the questions, just a couple other things we wanted to kind of part with. One of the most common strategies for success we see, and one of the reasons why I wanted to show you that sales report, because it can show you what outlets are performing best and who's buying the most of your work, is don't underestimate the power in tapping your existing customers. So we love the idea of building new relationships and finding new sources of income and new clients. But the reality is, most of the successful artists we know have a good percentage of their income coming from existing customers. So using the system to cultivate those relationships, continuing to build on them, remembering who likes what. So when you're working on a new work in that same style that they may be of interest to, reaching out to them. So this is kind of a silly analogy, but if you have a favorite musician and they come out with a new album, it's likely you're going to buy it. If you have an actor or actress that you really like and they're in a new film, you're probably going to want to see it. And the same holds true in the art world. Like, I know from being, I'm more of a collector than an artist myself. I am really excited to hear about what artists I've bought from before are working on, because I already have that existing relationship and they're already kind of dear to my heart on that front. The other thing is, we get so many questions on a daily basis on what's the e-commerce portal I should use, or what's the new social, that like, really take a step back, and because every day it seems like there's something new. And I understand FOMO is real, but instead of letting yourself get pulled in so many different directions, really focus on what's working for you and make thoughtful decisions about what other avenues to pursue. There's nothing wrong with exploring some of these new avenues, but I'm a really big fan of focusing on what's working and doing kind of micro experiments in those other outlets that may prove fruitful. So let's jump into questions.
Okay, great. Right as my dog starts barking. So apologies if you already dove into this, Justin. I was answering some questions in the chat, but someone just wants to see what an invoice looks like in more detail.
Sure.
Pull that up. Can we run through that?
Sure. Let me see if I have one. I don't know if it has any branding or letterhead, but if it doesn't. So here's what a standard invoice looks like. And let me blow that up if it's not bigger. Here's what a standard invoice looks like. And you can customize some elements of this, but here's what a standard invoice looks like. You can put your own letterhead or logo at the top. And then, as I mentioned, you can also create invoices with digital payment buttons. So if you're using the integrated version of this on Artwork Archive, it puts payment buttons on. So let me see if I can find a good example of that. So if I jump in here and I preview this one, you'll see that the payment buttons are on. In this particular case, you'll see the same branding, very similar style, but you'll see that people can pay by debit or credit card or use PayPal. And I know there's going to be some questions on this, so I'm going to try to preempt it a little bit. But one of the biggest things that we're talking about internally this year is we want to kind of meet you where you are. We know a lot of you have your own pre-existing solutions. So one of the things I always like to point out is, if you don't use our integrated version, when you're entering a new work in the system, I'm skipping down to the bottom of this, you'll see that there is a link to purchase piece. So let's say you use Shopify or Artsy or something like that, and you have a link to purchase that specific piece that you want to put in. You can add your own link here and it will override ours, and then you can sell via that platform. The other thing I want to point out is we are actively having conversations with some major payment processors right now to give more options than just the PayPal integration. A lot of you have asked for how do we simplify transactions in person, as we hope this shifts to endemic versus pandemic and people start to be more freely gathering. We know there's going to be a lot more in-person sales. So we're not only going to be looking to do some integrations with some major providers on the digital side of things, but also on the in-person side of things. And we hope to have some announcements about those in the next few months here.
That's great. Actually, we have a lot of questions, as you can imagine, about integrations. So around asking about Shopify, other POS, Xero, QuickBooks. So if you have anything else to add to that, and
sure.
And to that, one question to someone who's new to Artwork Archive is, does Artwork Archive replace their website within that?
Okay, so let me tackle that one first, because that's the easiest one, and then I'll go back to the other platforms. So can you use Artwork Archive as your website? We have some artists that do, but frankly, we don't recommend it. I would say 90+% of our users have their own websites, and we really encourage that. When you get into this kind of templated one-size-fits-all solution, we don't feel it's a great solution for artists that really want to be able to express their own creativity and have full control over their design aesthetic. So rather than trying to reinvent the wheel and compete with things like Squarespace or WordPress that have, thousands upon thousands of templates and infinite customizability. We instead focus on working with those partners and coming up with ways for you to embed information from Artwork Archive directly on those websites so they can work seamlessly. So right now you can embed your portfolio as well as individual collections onto your own website, regardless of platform. And then, as I mentioned, we are going to be looking at some much tighter integrations. So, I keep in mind that what I'm about to say is by no means a full commitment. These are things we're doing our due diligence on, and we have every intention of fully exploring this because there's a demand there. We have a lot of our users that use Squarespace. We have a lot of our users that use WordPress, and we have a significant a percentage of our users that also use Shopify. Those are the three main ones we're at least looking at to have more tighter integrations with. And as I mentioned, we should have some updates coming down the road on that. We are also looking always to further facilitate transactions, both digitally and in person. So there's some other payment solutions we are looking for right now. And I'm trying not to be so long-winded here, but right now, our integrated solution was done by design, meaning we intentionally did not build a one-click checkout option. And we did that because shipping is super complex, and solutions that offer that typically force you into a specific shipping solution. And that's a real challenge. The other reason, and this is really the main driver for why we like building it the way we built it out, is we wanted to make sure our artists had a real chance to form relationships with their clients versus providing this kind of one and done situation. So that one-click checkout is something we have not fully embraced. So for those of you that do lower cost, super high volume prints, our e-commerce solution may not be the best solution for you, because those are things you want to have as frictionless as possible because it's a volume game. And platforms like Shopify and things like that are really good at executing, or print on demand services that are doing the fulfillment. I hope what I just said makes sense, but I'm sure there'll be more questions and I can clarify. Oh, yeah. Someone mentioned QuickBooks, Xero, MailChimp. MailChimp will be the first integration we announced because I think 52% of our users use MailChimp. So that will be one of the first things we'll be launching, and that is already an approved project. And then we are also looking for really easy, seamless exports to platforms like QuickBooks and Xero. You already can export information into a spreadsheet that can be imported into those platforms, but this will just help clean up some of the headers and things like that to make that a bit more seamless.
No, that's great. And actually, as you were so thoroughly going through the integrations, some more questions came up around payments and invoices. So I wanted to go to those two. There's two of them. One is if you could just show everyone where they add the PayPal payment option on the public profile pieces.
So for those of you that want to activate that integrated version, you click on account. And as long as there is your PayPal email present there, then you will have the option to add those digital payment buttons when generating an invoice. So you'll see, if I want to drill into this invoice, I can toggle this off and on. And let's say you want that to appear on your public profile page. So let's see, let me just jump into Sophia's public profile page. And this is true for if you're embedding this on your own website as well. So if you're embedding this artwork on your own website, when they click purchase, whether you have digital payment buttons active or not, this will send the purchase inquiry to your inbox. So when you get that purchase inquiry, it'll come into your inbox, and then you can instantly create that digital invoice and get that out to them, work out whatever shipping, offer them other works, and really start that dialogue to make sure that that sale is successful. It also helps avoid double selling things and things of that nature. And if you want that purchase button to appear on your public profile, you'll just see in public settings that you can check which buttons, like show purchase button, on all applicable pieces.
Awesome. Okay, and while we are on the topic of selling artwork. Another question. How do you address tax on an invoice, given that the tax amount and percentages vary from state to state? Do you have to figure out the amounts ourselves?
You do. So if you are focused on calculating tax out of state and doing enough volume where that's warranted, you have the ability when you're generating the sale of that artwork to tailor that. Let me find something that's not sold. Okay, so let's say I was going to register this sale. I have the ability in this to manually enter that percentage and then save the sale. So you can actually manually enter this per situation if it is something you're charging state for or charging taxes for out of state. And that's another one of those things where that special tax webinar that we'll be doing, I believe she will be going over when that's appropriate, what's the threshold, when that has to be a concern, et cetera, and kind of what best practices are on that. But our system does allow you to kind of override and put in whatever percentage you want.
Great. Let's see. Let's go to a more general question. Justin, do you want to touch upon the question around recommendations around setting up a business around sole proprietary or becoming a corp or an LLC? Any thoughts on that?
I have tons of thoughts on that, but not for this particular webinar. That if that person wants to send us an email at info@artworkarchive.com, we will. Katie, do you have a idea of when the curriculum for best business practices is coming out?
That was already in week 1. We sent out all that information. So feel free to email us at team@artworkarchive.com if you were not on the Art Business Accelerator list that already went out. So we do talk about it in that curriculum.
Great.
And that, oh, sorry, Katie, go ahead.
Just how to choose which business model basically to sign yourself up for tax purposes and the benefits and cons of each one.
And this is one of the things I'm most excited about from an educational resources standpoint this year. And one of the things that Katie is probably most angry at me for saying because she is doing all the work on it. We have an amazing resource that's going to come out this year. It was something that we offered to our Business Accelerator grant recipients last year, and we're actually going to make it available to everyone. So it's this really comprehensive curriculum that is great for emerging, mid-career, and late career artists. And we should have that out sometime in Q2 of this year.
That's great. And I was going to ask Katie, do we have an article on that topic as well? I feel like we do, but I may be making it up.
It's quite possible, and I cannot confirm at this time.
We have a lot of articles.
It's true. I just don't remember.
Great. Well, for those on the webinar, we do have a really robust blog. Katie turns out a lot of content. We have about like 3 new articles a week, and the blog is over 10 years old. So if you go to artworkarchive.com/blog or to our website and then click resources, you'll see the blog. And
there it is.
You can do a keyword.
I have it on my screen.
Great. You can do a keyword search, if there's anything that you are interested in. You can also view the blog articles by category, if you're interested in marketing or inventory resources, whatever it may be. But yeah, that's another great resource.
Okay, what else?
Okay. Oh, a question about pricing. So Sandra asks, if we price high and need to readjust prices, how do we go back to a lower price without looking bad?
Oh, Katie.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer from Katie. I want you to answer from an artist standpoint. I'm going to answer from a collector standpoint. I would say I believe that it is an unlikely event that someone would even notice. Now, if you're talking about direct marketing to an individual and then you're talking about offering up a discount, I don't look at that as in a negative light as a collector, as that may be the thing that gets me off the fence. There was a piece I looked at recently that I really liked, but felt the price was a bit too high, couldn't get my mind around it. and the holidays came, this person sent me an email saying, hey, I knew you were interested in this not that long ago. I'm doing a holiday sale for, friends and my, immediate collectors. Is this something you're interested in? And it was a 25% discount, and I just bought it. So from an individual standpoint, I wouldn't worry about it. And then in general, most people aren't paying that close attention to your prices anyway, and probably wouldn't notice. Katie, what's your artist perspective on that?
I think that if you are doing something like a painting, or different paintings that are one of a kind, it is a little bit easier to say that people won't notice. If it is the exact same product, like for example, I am a potter and ceramic artist. If I had the same thing, because I do multiples, and then went back on it, I think that would be a little hard. So always, I mean, I'm always one that says price higher, but also be aware and leave room for growth. I think it is very hard to come back, especially if you're working with galleries. And you lower your price in you lower the price on the same thing, people are going to get mad. So kind of try and keep that in mind. If you can't come back, lesson learned. I don't know. It's a hard one.
No, I think that's good. Two different perspectives.
All right. Yeah, that's really helpful. I wanted to take a step back, because there were a few questions, as we mentioned, the Business Accelerator curriculum, some questions about where to apply for it, where to access those resources. If you guys can illuminate our.
Yeah, sure. So when we get this done, we will be sending it out to everyone. We will have we're working pretty diligently on a general resources page on artworkarchive.com in general that is going to really better showcase the webinars, all the free educational resources, some of the most popular blog posts. And one of the things we're going to be including there are our downloadable guides, like the grants thing, like things like this curriculum. So when that's out, it will not only be freely available on the website, but we will be sending an email out to anybody who's on our newsletter and via Instagram. So if you're not already following us on Instagram, please do, because that is going to start to be where we do start announcing things. We do a lot of featured artist spots and things like that. So it's a great resource, not only for education, but also for inspiration.
Let's see. Trying to find some questions that hopefully don't take too much time for you to noodle on. Katie, how would you advise artists factoring in the depreciation of unsold inventory in their pricing? Like, how do artists factor in that depreciation of unsold inventory?
Of unsold inventory or equipment?
The question is about unsold inventory.
Your inventory, your art inventory shouldn't be depreciating. Depreciation usually happens if you have like a large expense, like a kiln or a roof of your studio, and you should be basically like holding on to in your funds. You should be holding on to a depreciation like fund each year. So setting aside money, knowing that it'll depreciate, and you can also write off depreciation in your taxes, which we will go over later in our webinar.
Alyssian, can you ask that person, are they referring to, just so we make sure we understand the question, are they talking about legacy inventory, stuff that's been sitting around my studio for a while, and marking that down, or just the actual topic of depreciation?
Well, I think you just asked that question, so I'll keep my eyes peeled on the Q&A.
Okay, so and by the way, we try to get to as many of the questions here as possible. We also download the chat and try to respond to as many of you as possible offline. So if you don't feel like your question's been answered, don't hesitate to reach out via info@artworkarchive.com or via the chat on the free trial.
Yeah, so that's a great time and cue to pause and say, there was a question about whether the attendees of this webinar will have access to this Q&A portion of the webinar, because Katie and I have also been typing in answers as well, which everyone can see. And yes, we can export this Q&A along with the typed answers that we have been sharing. So I'll connect with Katie about making sure that that is sent along with the recording and the slides after the presentation. And yep, like Justin mentioned, access to us does not end here. You can contact us on our site, in the chat, in your Artwork Archive account. And then also we are all accessible via team@artworkarchive.com. And actually, since we're talking about artworkarchive.com, since we're talking about Artwork Archive, two great questions from people that are new to us, asking about, is there a fee to use Artwork Archive? And if so, with that fee, do we take a percentage of the payment of sales that you illustrated, Justin?
Great question. So Artwork Archive is a software as a service product. So it is a subscription-based service. All pricing is available at artworkarchive.com/pricing. If you are a member of an artist organization, nonprofit, or academic institution, make sure you mention that when you're signing up, because or talk to that particular institution, because very oftentimes we have discounts associated with nonprofits, as we've worked with them since we started over a decade ago. When it comes to percentage of sales, absolutely not. Our goal is to provide you with the tools you need to make a living doing what you love. We don't have an interest in participating in your transactions or like those relationships. Your sales, those are yours and yours alone. Now, if you are using a payment, if you're using the online payments and you're using PayPal or Stripe or Square or whatever it is you're using, each of those services has their own transaction fee that we have absolutely nothing to do with. Artwork Archive as a company does not participate in any or have any revenue share or take any commission. That money is yours.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left, and there have been a lot of questions about NFTs.
Oh my God. All right.
Yeah. How do you want to open that can of worms, Justin? A lot of general questions, right? About, we have artists who are making them, about tracking them, about selling them. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay. So that is fairly broad. If we get enough people asking about this, I will probably just write an article and put some resources out there to kind of demystify the topic, talk about some best practices. I think one thing for all of you to know, John and I are, we've been following the crypto world and NFTs for a number of years. We are still in the earliest of early innings here. It is still on the forefront, and there are so many barriers of entry and so many things that make it complicated and so many things that make it difficult for the average everyday consumer to purchase things. You are going to see, I debated writing an article on this topic quite recently, and then talked with some of my friends that are in the industry who gave me a heads up that there are going to be so many major advancements in that field this year that are going to remove barriers and make it exponentially easier, not only to produce them as an artist, but to consume them and purchase them as collectors and store them. So from Artwork Archive's standpoint, if there's enough interest, we were looking to add a feature in Artwork Archive that would allow you to capture and record your information. Can you still hear me, Alyssa?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you, where did did I cut off for a second?
No.
Okay, sorry. We're going to create something that allows you to capture the information about NFTs you've created. You can showcase them. It will show the token ID, the platform you choose to mint them on, and capture that information. And we're doing that for both the artist side and the collector side. Right now, we do not have any immediate plans to do direct integration or posting from Artwork Archive to OpenSea or Nifty or Rarible or any of, Artblocks or anything like that, simply because almost all those platforms are about to make major transformations to their systems to make it easier and more accessible. If you have specific NFT questions or want some general advice or anything NFT related, it's a really big rabbit hole. I would love to hear some specific questions because that'll help inform me on how I can write the article. I have not only created a number, but I have also, purchased a number of them. So it's a topic I'm familiar with, but it's also, as I mentioned, we are so early stage and things are going to be transforming so much. And I know there's just a ton of fear of missing out regarding that particular topic right now, but I'm taking off my hat as Artwork Archive, Justin, and just giving a general statement. I would advise all of you to look at it just like you'd look at any other outlet. It is not a silver bullet. It is not, it's just like when a new social network comes out. You have no idea whether that particular outlet or platform or tool is going to be the key to your success. It's just yet another means of getting artwork out there. There are absolutely wonderful things with provenance and attribution and smart contracts that let you participate in future sales and secondary revenue, and all that stuff is amazing. So there is some differentiation, but at the end of the day, you're still swimming in a sea of 1,000 or millions and millions of other items out there trying to differentiate yourself, and it's just one more platform to do so. Yeah. So going back to my kind of analysis paralysis statement, if you're going to do an experiment with that, just be thoughtful with how you approach it and know that even within the next 6 months, you're going to see some fairly big transformations on that front.
That's great. And to Justin's point, you all, if you have questions about NFTs, feel free to put them in the Q&A because we will be seeing this list after the presentation and going through it to make sure that we are creating content that answers your questions. I have a great question. It's something you talk about a lot, Justin. Is there a way to have an invoice get sent automatically if someone clicks the purchase button instead of the artist having to respond by sending the invoice?
No, not right now. And that is a good question. And it's something, it goes back to kind of my slight soapbox on the instant gratification and instant checkout. As it stands right now, when that purchase inquiry comes in, you have to click that create invoice button to do it. So the good news is it's already entering, it saves you having to enter that client information and that stuff. It saves you from having to generate the sale and things like that. You can just jump right in and create the invoice, but there is that back and forth with the client. And so, as we explore ways to kind of facilitate that or try to find some middle ground, we continue to look for ways to make that more efficient. It's just, there are some tricky things, particularly with shipping and fulfillment, particularly with people double selling the same work, and other things that makes it a bit more complicated. So the short version is, as it stands right now, when someone goes to your site and clicks purchase, there is that step where you're generating the invoice. I personally see this as a real opportunity. Like when I see that thing come into my inbox, I welcome that as an opportunity to meet that person, to form a relationship, to get to know them, find out their interests. So when I'm logging them in my contact system, I can add those rich details and market to them better in the future.
That's great. Let's see, I'm trying to see if there is anything else within the Q&A queue. Katie, Justin, if there's anything top of mind that you want to add while I'm scrolling through, just going to take a moment.
No, we really go through, two things that the chat does for us when you're putting these questions in there. We go through them as an entire team and parse through those, and it really helps inform upcoming topics, upcoming blog posts. And yeah, so we appreciate any and all feedback. We are always looking for ways to improve the platform, and this feedback is one of the main ways that we gain insights on where we should be prioritizing things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of great questions. There were some really great questions about the nitty-gritty about utilizing like a particular tool within artwork archive. So if those questions were not answered, we love fielding those questions, like Justin said, in our chat on our site, or connecting with us via team@artworkarchive.com. But our chat is the fastest way to get a hold of us. Everyone on the Artwork Archive team is in chat. And then that way we can help you right where you are. So if you're in your Artwork Archive account, we can help you get the most out of it. Yeah, I think we did a good job, team, covering everything. I'm going through the Q&A. Any last questions to those on the webinar?
No, I think, Katie, do you have anything else to add?
Not at this time. I'm talking to some people who have some great questions, and keep them coming. If you guys have any more questions at all after this chat ends, and we are not able to get back to you, just feel free to reach out to us at our email at team@artworkarchive.com.
I do have one great question to end on. Stephanie said that she mostly does commission work. She creates when the customer contacts her. Is Artwork Archive still a good option for her versus an online gallery to purchase from?
So is the question about creating commissions within or displaying past work for showcasing for future commissions?
Yeah, I think what would be great to cover, Justin, is how we can help artists who primarily work within commissions, whether it's the organization and then the marketing of.
Got it. Okay, so let me start with the recording of. So as it stands now, you can create works in progress, share project or like progress updates with a particular client. That's really helpful. You can create invoices that accept partial payments. So for those of you who take deposits, you can do that. And then one of the most popular features that are used by our, commission focused artists and basically artists in general is our private rooms feature. So private rooms are a great way for you to put together an individual or group of works to showcase to an individual or group of people. So there's a couple neat things about this. It creates a virtual private viewing room. So here's a Bright series that, Sophia put together, and she could put whatever she wants as a description, and people can go through, learn more about it, see multiple camera angles or whatever description you've chosen to add here. And something we are super excited to talk about when it comes to this is one of the biggest advancements we're going to make in private rooms this year, just because it is such a popular feature, is we are going to be adding a couple key features. One is the ability to favorite. So let's say you use this as a commission artist and you say, here's some past work. They are going to be able to favorite the styles they liked the most or the works or techniques they like the most, and they are going to be able to add comments. So instead of just being able to view the details of this, I'm going to be able to favorite it and then add specific feedback directly to you as an artist. So let's say you're showcasing in progress work. They're going to be able to click in and say, you know what, I love the direction you're going, but I want to see more metal incorporated into it, or whatever, depending on your discipline. The other thing with private rooms that we're really excited about is a lot of you ask, how can I view who's seen this? I can see who I shared it with because you logged that, but when I want to see when they came into it. So we're going to be building this kind of guest book so that when that person you shared it with or that group you shared it with visits this, it's going to record it. So this is going to be an even better tool than it already is, not just for showcasing commissions or works in progress, but for also getting work in front of individuals and smaller groups.
Great. I think, so we are 1 minute past time. Everyone, this is your last minute to get your question into the Q&A chat box so that we have record of it. Otherwise, like we said, you're more than welcome to contact us through the chat box or at team@artworkarchive.com. I'm just going to turn my video back on. I'm like flushed with all these great questions. It was a lot to take in. It was great. Thank you for the engagement. Thank you to our current Artwork Archive users for all of your great feedback. And thank you to everyone who's new to take the time to learn more about us and how we can help.
Quick question, Alyssa. The only way to have a recorded question is through the Q&A, right? Not through just the chat?
We can also view the chat. There were some of you that came in. Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a wonderful day and a great weekend. And we hope to see you soon.
Bye. We hope to see you, Justin, wherever you are. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Have a great day.